All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another stream of Open Source Friday. I'm Karan from the Developer Relations team at GitHub. And these Open Source Friday streams are for all of you to connect with various different open source maintainers, open source projects from around the world, and also learn about how you can contribute and also discover various different projects out there as well, which are building in the open. And today's project is something very similar as well. In fact, when I first came across this project and when I was taking a look at it, one of my first reactions was that, is this actually open source? Because it seems something which was so very polished and nice, and something that would have been probably not something that you might have expected to see in the open source, but there it is. So in today's Open Source Friday live stream, we will be looking at a project called as Ente. And with me, I have the maintainer and the founder and the CEO all in one of Ente, which is Vishnu Mohandas. Hi, Vishnu.
Hi, Karan. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much for joining. Really, really great, great to have you over here. So before we get started, Vishnu, so can you tell us a little bit about what Ente is?
Got it. So Ente is an open source cloud for folks to store and share and like pass down their photos and videos and a few more things. It's end-to-end encrypted, which means that you have absolute privacy of your data. So we can't Ente as a service provider or no third party can actually access your data. And what we're trying to do is still deliver the same kind of polish and user experience that you guys are used to from big tech, while still maintaining like absolute sanctity of user data. So it's an interesting product, and even from a technical perspective, it's an interesting project to kind of work on. And yeah, that's what Ente is.
Nice. Vishnu, I actually came across a video on your blog, which I thought was really nice, showcasing what Ente is and actually can do. So I want to showcase that to all of those tuning in who will probably get a better idea of what Ente is and how they can use it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Nice. That's interesting, Vishnu. So a quick question. I saw over there as a 10 GB or 1000 GB free, etc., and then also open source. So what's the deal over here? Is it also, does Ente offer hosted plus open source, or how does that work?
Right. So Ente is fully open source. So if you want to run Ente on your own servers, you can do it at a single command, like there's a quick start script which you can run on your terminal, and it will boot up all of the infrastructure that we have. Now, at the same time, we also offer a hosted service, and that is how we're building a business, a sustainable business out of what we're building. So a lot of customers just opt for the hosted variant, wherein we store your data and we store it reliably across 3 different data centers. Primarily in the EU, and so that's kind of where we make our money from. But yeah, at any point you can just run Ente on your own servers, and we give 10 GB for free in case you are like if you're using the cloud service.
Nice, that's great. So if I understand right, it's the model where you're offering, of course, the entire platform, I'm guessing, which includes like a server as well as the client completely open source, but for those who might want to have a hosted version, don't want to self-host it, etc., along with everything that's needed, you have a hosted version where you have storage limits and things like that, right?
Right, that's right. Yes.
Nice, nice. That's great. Let's chat about Ente a bit more in a bit, Vishnu. But tell us a little bit about your background. How did you go about kind of starting Ente itself, and what has your journey been as a developer?
So I'm basically a programmer. I've been writing code for quite some time now. I think since in school, and I've worked at a bunch of startups like in India. Then I spent some time working at Google. And for me, the primary motivation to start a company like Ente was out of personal need. Like I wanted a safe place to store and like share my photos. And so before Ente, I was like a very hardcore fan of Google Photos, and I used to really love the product. Because before that, I was not someone who would kind of go back and look at stuff, but at the same time, I was very attached to like the photos that I click because I grew up around a lot of photos. My dad was like this very active photographer, and so there is a general sentimental attachment to photos. But while working at Google is when I realized that the at the end of the day, Google is an advertising company, and for someone like me who attaches a lot of sentimental value to their photos, giving all of this data to Google did not seem like the smartest move to make. So I took a step back and I looked at other alternatives, and I bought an iPhone, and then I moved all of my data to iCloud, and only to then realize the problem with Apple is vendor lock-in. Like they lock all of your data to their ecosystem. So I at that point still had a Linux, like a ThinkPad, and I couldn't see my own photos on my laptop, and which was ridiculous. And I couldn't share it with my wife who had a Samsung device. So all of this kind of just made me realize I can't really rely on Apple, because for me this is like very personal data. These are my photos, and now someone dictating where I can see them, where I can't see them, just felt very absurd. And then I looked around, and there were no other services out there which is delivering the level of polish that Google or Apple was in terms of like going back and discovering your stuff. So I mean, Dropbox was there because it was at least cross-platform, but at the same time, they give you a very enterprisey folder and file structure to your photos as well. So that did not work for me. So then I just quit my job, and I just thought I'll start building a project for myself, like for my family to show their photos, and that has since just grown into Ente.
Wow, that's really nice. One of the things, Vishnu, that always reminds me when people and many developers keep asking as to how do you start an open source project, how do you start contributing, etc. I think whenever I hear stories like yours and Ente's, it's very very clear that it starts with the problem, right? The problem that you probably yourself are facing, and how do you go about solving that? And I think many of us as developers kind of feel very inclined and also empowered to solve all of that, right? I mean, how many people can think about, okay, here I have a problem and I want to solve it, and for us as developers, having access to technology, knowing the tools and resources, and then actually utilizing that to build it, I think is really great.
Right.
So how did the thought of making Ente open source really come up? I understood what you mentioned, that hey, some of the other products out over there have things around blockchain and then also sharing the data, etc. But what was the thought process behind saying that, okay, let's make Ente open source?
So we're the primary pitch right now for Ente is privacy. That you don't have to trust us, and in any scenarios wherein the service provider is claiming that they're end-to-end encrypted, the basic criteria they have to meet is open sourcing their clients, so that you can verify that the data, any data that's leaving the device, is actually encrypted, and ideally get an external cryptography audit as well done. So we had done both. Like, so it's actually funny, right? So when people say that WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted, there is actually no way for anyone to actually verify that, like Zuckerberg or anyone at Meta is not really listening into your conversations, that there are no backdoors. So by open sourcing and providing verifiable bills, we are actually backing up that claim. So a lot of it came from the point of view of trust. So from the beginning, Entace, all of our apps are open source. And in fact, initially when the server was open source, then we realized that if we go down the purely self-hosted route, then we might end up being too niche a product, wherein which is primarily with just like hobbies and tinkerers, and that it might not really become as big of a deal as we would wish for it to be. So then we waited it out for a while. I think 3 years into building the companies when we went fully open source, like we open source the servers also, because we then had the engineering bandwidth to just maintain a community around it and give them what they also wanted. And the rationale behind doing that was, one, it was always on the cards because we felt it was like a nice thing to do. A lot of, as a programmer, a lot of who I am is because of open source, and we're just using a lot of other building blocks and just building bigger things on top. So there is a sense of gratitude that is always that we have to give back. And another reason was posterity, in the sense that when it comes to your photos, there is this expectation that, like, I would want my kid to get the photos I've clicked off her, like when I'm not around. And for a company like Ente, that's actually important that we try our level best to stay alive for the longest duration of time. And there are multiple ways to accomplish this. So we are in general building the company in a very risk averse way, without any venture capital, just in a default alive mode. And open source gives you huge edge in the sense that another project is actually bigger than each of the individual contributors. So if I were to get out, and if one of us were to get hit by a bus, it's a, now could be a GitHub repo, whatever that code is out there is for anyone to kind of just fork and build on top of. So even in the worst case, we would actually be leaving behind a force that is nice and that is beautiful and that's accessible for folks to just continue using. So a lot of it was just from a longevity or posterity perspective.
That's nice. That's nice, Vishnu. So, a follow-up question that I have in terms of, when you think about generally users using things like photos on any platform, right? Since you have both like a open source self-hosted model as well as kind of a cloud-hosted model that you provide, can users actually migrate between both of these versions, saying that, okay, I'm going to start off using the cloud, but then now I really love this so much that I want to, host it myself and then take all of my photos from Ente's cloud onto my open source self-hosted version?
Right. So migration happens both ways, actually. There are folks who are on self-hosted instances also who realize at some point that the amount of effort involved in running something that's as critical as photos is very high. Like, so that's one of the reasons why we went to the cloud first approach, because there was a point where my wife was asking me, the dude, like, if when you're not around, like, who will make sure that I can still like, get my data? And the last thing she would want to deal with at that point will be like making sure that the Docker containers are up and whatnot. Okay, so coming back to the question, so it's actually very simple to migrate data, to actually get your data out of Ente and to put it back into Ente. Like in general, something we have taken offense with Google is how difficult they make it for you to actually get your data out in one piece. So there is a tool called Google Takeout. They absolutely mangle your data and make a mess out of it. So there is a very strong vendor lock-in. And since day one, when we launched, there was like a single click button to just export all of your data incrementally. So that there is a desktop app for this. And for the more tech-savvy users, we also have a CLI client. There's a command line interface wherein they can again programmatically run a command and it will kind of pull all of your data. And then you can, there are folks who then run self-hosted instances which watch these folders to which they pull data and then they maintain their own backup of it. So our eventual goal, like we were discussing this recently, would be to kind of make a Git-like system wherein servers are all, I mean, there are multiple remotes and then there is clients which are just talking to multiple remotes, so that you don't really, that this is all more seamless than it is right now. And that is something we would like to work towards.
I would personally love that, at least the thought of, okay, this is somewhere present on, say my local server as well as the cloud, as well as some other instance, I think, would be really great. So, Vishnu, can you talk a little bit about the end-to-end encryption aspect that you mentioned? I know one of the things that you mentioned is that, okay, we are making it open source so that it is verifiable for anyone, and you also had it audited to make sure that this is truly end-to-end encrypted, right? So can you talk a little bit about that?
So there is a slightly more verbose example of what I'm going to say within ente.io/architecture. So we have a white paper of sorts which goes into detail of what our architecture is and how we perform the cryptographic operations that we do. So primarily we build on top of this library called libsodium, which is like a very popular, very well-vetted library. And we have an architecture which is similar to a lot of password managers, wherein when you sign up, there is a password that you provide, and we use that password to create a key, to derive a key, which is then yours, and that's your master key. And then we make sure this master key never leaves your device unencrypted. And any data that is uploaded by you from there on is uploaded, is encrypted by this master key or some variation of this master key. And this master key basically never leaves your device unencrypted. And at any point, you can always derive this master key by entering your password. So as long as you remember your password, you can just sign in on any device and it will work seamlessly, exactly how other apps work. There is a email and then there is a password, and we can just derive your master key at that point and then just decrypt your data, and all of this is seamless.
That's nice. That's nice. And you also mentioned that you had all of your client apps also audited by cryptographers to ensure that the end-to-end encryption is like really sound, right? How do you ensure like continuous kind of audit or a security measure, because audit is always point in time, right? So how do you
Right.
ensure that every release or so continues to be secure and you kind of hold on to your principles?
So the way we look at it is that in terms of, there are multiple kinds of audits, right? If there is a security audit, then all audits, like you said, are like there is a checkpoint in time wherein it has happened. And since then, for security audits especially, it actually makes a lot of sense to continuously keep getting this done, especially if you don't have like a very strong security background within the team. For cryptography, the way we look at it, it's that it's more of a sense of trust that we're trying to establish, that there's a third party who's verified this. So when we built this out, we had gotten this vetted by enough folks who knew cryptography better than us. So we knew that what we were doing was pretty sound. So the external audit, which is expensive by the way, was just a proof to everyone who's using Ente, and to the rest of the community that, hey guys, we know what we're doing, and it's more of that than anything else. And in terms of continuously looking at this, so our architecture has not changed since the first audit. So whatever we have done was in a certain way that this could actually scale for multiple use cases. Like we have a photos app, we also have an authenticator app which actually uses the exact same primitives. By doing this, what we have, there's internal trust that, guys, we know that multiple folks, including a third party who's not affiliated to us, has put their stamp of approval. So it's safe to build on top of this. Now there are moments where we'll actually have to deviate from this to build some new features at some point, and that is a point wherein it'll actually make sense for us to go and get another cryptography audit done, both internally and then externally, so that it's again verifiable that we know what we're talking about.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, that's helpful to know. And of course, outside of the audits and then ensuring that you stay on the same fundamentals which has been verified, I'm sure some of the basic app security or infra security, all of those things are anyhow which you would be having in place either way, right? Outside of being end-to-end encrypted.
Right.
So, so it's interesting you mentioned about the end-to-end, auth app. I'll come to that in a minute. But, one of the things I want to also know about is Ente is open source, right? And of course, you probably have a team working on it as well. So can people, and when I say people, developers, go ahead and then contribute and help Ente grow? And how would you suggest developers who are interested in saying that, okay, this is something that I want to help grow or probably customize or either ways, right? So what's your suggestion?
So there are multiple ways to help a company like Ente, and our belief is that code contribution is not the most helpful way for us, because the way we are building Ente, it's in a very opinionated way, that we want to make sure that this is a piece of software our parents can use and or our children can use, and there is a sense of vision behind the product and the end user experience that we want to deliver. And this gets lost at times when we allow for arbitrary contributions. Like for example, someone might be like, hey, I have this very niche use case, and I want to add an advanced button and like toggle within the advanced section, and all of these things add incremental complexity to the product. And there is like this XKCD comic on how if you give something to the user, you just cannot take it back, because people will figure out use cases that you have not imagined for that little toggle. So in general, we don't encourage code contributions unless it's very well discussed with us, and like, so we primarily run on GitHub. So there are GitHub discussions wherein people can come up with things and they can suggest improvements. And there are certain areas, for example, let's say there's a server-side API which could use some refactoring or could use some changes. Those are places wherein people actually do make changes. So documentation is another place where people contribute. Translations is something people contribute with. Now with our authenticator app, we have the idea of icons. Like each provider can have an icon. So if someone has a provider for whom we don't have an icon, they contribute with icons. And in general, we tell the community to help us with marketing by spreading the word rather than by trying and contributing with code, unless we are absolutely on the same page in terms of what end result, like in terms of pixels, what is it that we want to deliver to our end customers.
Got it. Got it. So it's not that you're not open to contributions, but you're open to contributions when it when it is not really deviating a lot from what is your product thought process and vision. So you're still open to contributions, be it on documentation and also just generally helping on other areas. And also I think in a way probably it's also makes sense because you're saying that hey, a lot of your server APIs and app and also client apps have the end-to-end encryption, which might work very differently from some of the other projects that developers might be used to working on or contributing, etc. Right?
Right, right. And at the end of the day, code is baggage, right? If someone writes code, it's something that we have to perpetually maintain in some sense for the rest of the product's lifetime. So, which is another reason why we want to make sure that we're absolutely aligned in terms of any changes that we're making, because at the end of the day, we have to take ownership for maintaining it. So, any feature we build, any screen that we change, any button we add, at the end of the day, the onus is on us to make sure that there is a level of energy that goes into maintaining it, which is why we are very careful about that. Again, there is no one philosophy that fits all. I think there are projects which are very, very collaborative in nature. I think Wikipedia is one of them, right? I mean, and these projects do succeed at a very large scale. It is just that we are perhaps building Ente with a different set of philosophies at this point, which might again change tomorrow.
Got it. Got it. Uh, So that said, I was just looking at the organization and the repo github.com/ntio, and you folks have around what 19.5K stars. So how did people start hearing about this? Hearing about the project, and how did you go about even getting all of the people to share any bug reports or feedback and everything else? Because looking at your issues as well, there is a whole lot of bug reports and everything else that keeps getting filed, right? So how did you go about spreading the word initially and also kind of building this community of people who are helping you grow?
Right. So I think a lot of our initial traction came from Reddit and then Hacker News. Both of these communities were very instrumental for this, and these are communities where we are a part of. So we can very well relate to the other folks. So it's a very authentic exchange the whole time, right? Whenever there is any criticism, any feedback, and both of these communities are ruthless in their own sense. These are not very friendly places on the internet to hang out at. But at the same time, these are folks who are very open to adopting new things and, in general, supporting underdogs. And we are trying to build an alternative to like big tech services. So we're very much an underdog. So in general, there is initial traction that came from these forums. And since then, I think at some point we decided to start a community on Discord, just because we felt that is where folks are hanging out these days. We had a choice between Slack and Discord, and it's actually funny, we chose Discord simply because it had better padding. Like Slack just seemed way too congested for the eyes, it just seemed unfriendly. So we started with Discord, and that turned out to be a good idea because it grew on its own. Like it was a very slow gradual growth. It is still growing very slowly, and the vibe there is really nice. People are very friendly, they understand who we are, what we're trying to do, and they themselves go out of their way to share feedback and to come back with things which could actually improve the trajectory of the product and the company in general. So I guess the answer is that I don't really know how things have kind of gotten where we are. We knew how things started, and since then it's been a very organic way of like how we've reached where we have.
That's nice. That's nice. I think that speaks a lot about your product as well as to how well you've built it and how relatable it is. Because that's most often when if a problem is being solved in the right way that's useful for many people, there is very much that organic adoption that that projects and products might start seeing as well, right? So there's one interesting thing again I noticed on Ente website, and which I think we briefly saw in the video as well, is you mentioned there is an on-device AI search. Can you share a little bit about that feature? That seems interesting. So are you running a model locally and then using it, or how does that work? If you were to explain it to developers as to like what is this on-device AI search functionality really look like?
Right. So since Ente is end-to-end encrypted, we have no information about your data at our server. And in most cases, most of the providers, what they do is they run the machine learning algorithms or like the models on their server over your data, and then provide features on top of this. In case of Ente, since we don't have access to your data, this is not something we can actually do. So what we're left with is to run machine learning at the point where data is actually available, which is your device. And so which is exactly what we do. So while we are uploading your data, we run certain models. Right now there are features like face recognition and semantic search. So we run these models. For face recognition, there's a pipeline of models or like operations that run, like just align your face to get those embeddings, to cluster those embeddings, and then you might give feedback: is this the same person, is this a different person? Now all of this derived information is then encrypted and then synced across your devices, so that you don't have to index this again on a separate device. And similarly, when semantic search works similarly, there is a model clip which basically enables queries, like it links text to images. So you can search for things like sunset at the beach with a baby wearing a yellow dress next to a dog. Like you can actually have really, really long, complicated queries. So we run those models also on device, and then whatever embeddings we get, we just encrypt and sync them across. There is a bit of challenges here because one compute is, these are compute constrained environments. These are like
Yeah.
I have like a Pixel 7, and to run these models on these devices is not very easy. So either we downscale these models, or we figure out smarter ways to run this on your device without eating up a lot of your battery. Like when we know the device is idle is when we actually run this magic. And yeah, so this actually taken us it's taken us an embarrassing amount of time to ship these features, because we wanted to make sure that we're getting things right as much as possible in the first shot. And now I think things are actually quite good. Like if you guys are listening, like I don't know if you saw the video at the beginning that Karan rolled out. So these are actual features in production. We have features like face recognition that for most part, at least for me, it actually works really well. The feedback from customers are also actually quite good. So we just, and the other problem with building features like this is that there is no this has not been done before. So there is no place that we can actually take inspiration from or copy paste from. So a lot of this is us pushing the frontier. And if you guys are interested in this, there is again another white paper at ente.io/ml that you guys could check out, wherein we go into depths of how we're doing what we're doing for running machine learning on the edge.
That's nice. That's nice. That's really interesting and good to know of balancing all of those different things in terms of privacy, end-to-end encrypted, resource constraints in a mobile computing environment as well, and things like that, right? So really good to hear about that. Um, so what's you also mentioned there is the end-to-end encrypted auth app, right? So can you share a little bit about what's the difference between an end-to-end encrypted auth app versus any other auth app?
Right. So auth is something we started building internally for our own use case. So our co-founder and CTO Neeraj, he had this thing that like if we lose our devices, a lot of times it's very likely for us to get locked out with a product like, let's say, Google Authenticator or any authenticator app which doesn't provide backups. And then as he looked into it, he realized that there is actually no service out there which gives end-to-end encrypted backups. So that even if you lose a device, the tokens are still there. And we already had this architecture which was generic enough for us to build on top of. So what we've done is we treat even the tokens, the 2FA tokens, the secrets behind these 2FA tokens as blobs, and then we put that on the server. So if you sign in on a new device, you can still get those tokens. And we have apps for Android, iOS, web, Linux, Mac, desktop. So we're everywhere. So in terms of, if you were to compare us with other authenticator apps, there are this availability on platforms which sets us apart. Then there is the fact that you don't have to worry about losing a device, which is again setting us apart. And in terms of UX also, we feel what we have built is actually nicer than all the other apps out there. There are little gimmicky features we've added, like you can see the next code without waiting for the time to expire. And this will sound very silly, but at the same time, this is, I think, like a spark of genius from Neeraj. You don't have to wait for the time to expire to see the next code. You can already enter the next code. And there are little bit of niceties that we've added, again, from with community feedback and suggestions. So if not for photos, if you guys do take security seriously, I would say you guys should check out Auth, because I can personally say that it is the best, if not one of the best authenticator apps out there. And it's fast and it's free. It's yeah.
That's great. That's great. And I think all of these, both Ente as well as the Auth app, is available on github.com/Ente.io. And I think there is, I'm guessing there's a separate repository for it there, right?
No, so we take a mono repo structure actually.
Okay.
All of our products, because our server is also a monolith, and so all of our apps, all of our services, like all of the stacks, everything is checked into this single repo, which is ente.io/ente. So yeah, you guys can go and give us a star if you wish. Right? Yeah,
Nice,
that
nice.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, and that's good to know as well. I was just also checking out, and then saw that there is a whole lot of workflows that you use on GitHub Actions as well, which I'm guessing seems to be for a whole lot of deployments, packaging, releases as well, right?
Right. Right.
That's
So we actually do depend on Actions quite a bit. One is for deploying, like for example, server Docker images and whatnot. The second good thing that I feel GitHub Actions provides is that reproducible builds that I was talking about earlier. So it is, you don't have to trust us. You don't have to go to Play Store. You know that if you're getting a build out of GitHub Actions, wherein we also share the checksum of the final build. So it's easy for you to go back in time and say that, okay, this build was verifiably built with this code at this checkpoint. And for, again, apps like Ente with end-to-end encryption, it might not be a necessity, like in some sense. Like for example, WhatsApp is again surviving out there; they're massive, but we feel it's the legitimate thing to do. So there is no trust me, bro angle here. Right? You don't have to trust us. You can just grab the build from GitHub and be rest assured that it is actually built from the source that it was like what is out there. And GitHub Actions is something we use to leverage that.
nice, nice. That's great to know. So what's the roadmap looking like, Vishnu? Either from a short term, or the vision like of how you want to grow Ente, be it on the photo side or be it on the Auth side. What's the short, mid, and long term roadmap like?
See, the long-term roadmap is to just exist perpetually. That is what we would like to ensure. So there is a way in which we're trying to build a company which will improve our odds of that happening. And so that is one angle to this, right? Like we discussed about being open source, by not taking VC money and a bunch of those stuff. Because in general, there are not a lot of consumer apps out there which are bootstrapped and sustainable. And so we're being one of those apps out there. And if you look at your phone, there are very few fast consumer apps that are out there. So there is we're kind of playing the game in a hard mode in some sense, but at the same time, that's what makes it interesting, right? So that is a long-term plan, in some sense, that just be there, be around. In terms of short-term, mid-term, so our primary focus is on photos right now, because at least on short term, it's definitely on photos, because there is a lot of joy and gratitude we feel we can deliver with photos, because these are moments that you've shared with somebody, and when you go back and look at it, see, in general, I think life is getting more and more complex, and it's difficult for all of us to be grateful for the little things that are there. And a lot of times when we click photos is because we are kind of grateful for that moment, and we want to look back at it at some point. So we think backups is one part of the problem, right? And that is table stakes. Now, how do we enable discovery of these moments? How do we push the right memory to you at the right point in time, so that you feel better about your own life? So there is that angle to the product, which I think is very interesting to build. So yeah, most of our focus right now is on one is discovery. The second part is actually sharing, because at the end of the day, we click photos that we can actually share those with people that we care about, or people we have shared those memories with. And I fundamentally feel this is broken across all apps, that photo sharing is a pain. Now, I don't have a magical solution to how to solve this, but at the end of the day, we either come to like WhatsApp groups or Signal chats to actually share photos. And those are very different platforms, right? Like it's a very ephemeral conversation that's happening, and you share a photo in a group, and then it just gets scrolled all the way up within a couple of minutes. And so those are interesting problems in terms of sharing that we have to work on, that we are looking forward to working on. And in the midterm, there are other products also that our community has been asking us to build, like because the architecture is very generic, we can build more than just photos. So there is this file storage thing that people have been asking for, wherein it might not be like a drive backup, but you might have like maybe like 50 documents which are actually very important for you. Or like my dad might have 50 documents that he wants me to have when he's not around. So now there is no clear-cut way for these documents to be passed down. And we think there is a lot of value in building a service like that. So in the midterm, we would want to look at things, problem statements outside photos as well, and to see if we can provide more value. But yeah, right now, so short term is photos, midterm is more than photos, and the long term is just to be around.
Nice, nice. That's you put it in a very succinct as well as a clear way as well. All right. So for those who are who are tuning in live, or if you're watching this video later on, if you have any questions for Vishnu about Ente itself or any of the challenges that have come across, please feel free to share it here in the chat, and we'll bring up, even though it's probably something very silly. Speaking of silly, I have a silly question, Vishnu. Probably, what does Ente mean? Like, where did that name come from? What is the meaning of that name?
Right. So Ente means mine in Malayalam. So I am from this little coastal state called Kerala in India, and my mother tongue is Malayalam, and Ente in Malayalam means mine. So the idea is like this is my stuff, and hence the privacy angle to this and stuff. It was actually suggested by my wife because this was the only domain that is actually available. I had this thing in my head that we should get a 4-letter brand name, like when I was starting the company. And in general, domains are hard to get. And most of these words that you would want are either trademark or work mark and stuff like that. So one, it means mine, and the other meaning that's there is that it's a duck in German. And in general, I have the habit of playing around with rubber ducks, and I'm actually at home right now, so they're not on my desk. But at least now that there are ducks, and because it's again that rubber ducky debugging thing. Like I don't know if you guys will know. So there was that angle to this as well, and then we just leaned into that branding at some point by adding a duck as a mascot, and it was a playful brand, and it's a playful company that we want to create because it kind of resonates with who we are as people who are building Ente, and the kind of vibe that we have internally. The ducky kind of embodies that, and yeah, so that's the meaning behind the word Ente, and yeah, that's why we picked that name.
That's nice. That's nice. That's interesting. Interesting to know as well. And for those who want to kind of go and then check out the repo itself, and then just try it out or so with self-hosting, you can find it on github.com/ente -io/ente. And I believe for those who want to also give it a spin on cloud hosted on Ente, you can check that out on ente.io as well, right? Great. So any final thoughts or anything, Vishnu, that you want to share before we wrap up?
If any few folks are actually trying to self-host, we have a very active Discord community as well. So you can check us out at discord.ente.io. And there are folks who will kind of help you out. And on GitHub discussions, if you ask questions, people are very responsive. In terms of closing thoughts, nothing much. I mean, thank you for having me, Karan. And it's nice that GitHub and Microsoft, when you guys are doing these streams and trying to push open source forward in some way. Like my encounter with open source is also on GitHub. And I think GitHub in general has kind of pushed the world in a more open direction from that perspective. So grateful that you guys are doing this, and grateful for having somebody like me here. And because like I said, like I'm like this very small town boy from this very small place in Kerala. And if I think it's also proof that a very normie programmer like me can try and build things which we believe are bigger than ourselves. Like I think try is the important word there, right? But there is no fun if you're not trying. So if anyone who's listening thinks that I can be helpful in some way, you guys can please reach out to me. Like my email address is plastered over our website ente.io. You'll find it. Like if I can be useful, I would love to be useful.
You know, Vishnu, I think that's one of the power of open source as well, right? It helps bring people together and collaborate from across the world, irrespective of where you are, or what you're working on, or what is your level of skill set as a developer, right? From those who are students to beginners to seasoned engineers, and everyone else can kind of come together in a shared way to collaborate. I think that's really the power of open source, which I'm sure you would also have realized when you put Ente out over there and would have seen all of your customers use it, build it, self-host it, and then also kind of appreciate all of the efforts which go behind it, right? So, and that's one of the things that we are also encouraging a whole lot of developers is to really participate in the ecosystem in open source and collaborate, because you get to learn, you get to contribute, you get to build connections, you get to solve problems as well, all collaboratively.
Right. Right.
Great. Thank you so much, Vishnu, for joining us on Open Source Friday, sharing about Ente. So we spoke a lot around what was the journey behind Ente and what was, the things that you intend to build differently. Got into some of the specifics around how certain features are built, what is the roadmap that you're looking at as well, etc. So it was really, really nice talking to you and having you on Open Source Friday again, Vishnu. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Karan. You have a great weekend. And everyone else who's listening, have a great weekend.
Thank you so much. Great. Thank you, everyone, all of you who joined in or are watching this video of Open Source Friday with Vishnu from Ente. So it's really great. Do check out the project, and also connect with the team for anything else that you might have. We have more such Open Source Friday streams coming up. You can tune into GitHub social channels on X, LinkedIn, YouTube, and multiple other places where we are, including Blue Sky, etc., where you can find out all of the other Open Source Friday streams that we have on a regular basis. Specifically, to know about what's happening in India, feel free to just tune into x.com/GitHub India, where we share a lot more about what's happening in the open source as well as developer ecosystem in India. So thank you once again, and have a great rest of the weekend, hopefully participating in open source.